I'm Iris, 32, female. I live in a small bungalow on the outskirts of the city, a place I inherited and filled with the two things I love most, my husband, Ben, and my pottery studio. My hands are almost always covered in a fine layer of clay dust, and the rhythmic whir of the potter's wheel is the soundtrack to my life, but the piece I carefully crafted was about to be shattered by the one person who always seemed to resent it, my sister-in-law, Chloe. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The house wasn't just mine. It was a complicated inheritance from Ben and Chloe's grandmother, a woman I had adored. She was a painter, and she understood my soul in a way few people did. In her will, she left the house to Ben, with the explicit wish that I, her kindred artistic spirit, would use the large, sunlit garage as my permanent studio. It was her gift to both of us. Ben was meant to have the security of a home, and I was meant to have the space to create. Chloe, on the other hand, received a substantial trust fund, equivalent to the home's market value at the time. On paper, it was perfectly fair. In Chloe's heart, it was a profound betrayal. She never saw a home, she saw an asset. A dead asset, she called it once, during a tense Sunday dinner. It's just sitting there, not appreciating the way it could if you just renovate and flip it, she'd said, waving her fork dismissively at our cozy, lived-in decor. Ben, ever the peacemaker, would just mumble something about sentimental value, and I would try to change the subject, but the tension was always there, a low hum beneath the surface of every family gathering. Chloe was a marketing manager downtown, all sharp blazers and sharper ambition. She couldn't comprehend a life measured in fired pots and kiln temperatures, rather than quarterly profits and market shares. My life with Ben was good, quiet, and stable. He was a software engineer, logical and kind, and he loved that my work was tactile and earthy, a counterbalance to his world of code and screens. He supported my small business, helping me set up a website and manage online orders for my ceramic pieces. We weren't wealthy, but we were happy. The house was our sanctuary, a place where the scent of wet clay mingled with the aroma of Ben's cooking. Chloe's visits became more frequent after she lost her job. The company she worked for underwent a restructuring, and her high-powered position was eliminated. Suddenly, her comments about the house shifted from casual disdain to pointed inquiry. She'd walk through the rooms, tapping walls and measuring corners with her eyes. You know, she'd say, if you knocked out this wall, you could easily add another 100,000 to the value. Or, this garden is a waste of space, pave it over for extra parking. Buyers love that. Each suggestion felt like a small violation, an attempt to scrub away the character of the home and replace it with her own cold, commercial logic. I tried to ignore it, telling myself she was just stressed and projecting her financial anxieties onto us. I wanted to believe in the best version of my husband's sister, even as she made it increasingly difficult. The unspoken rivalry simmered, waiting for a single spark to ignite it into a full-blown fire. That spark was about to come, and it would be far more explosive than I could have ever imagined. The day it all fell apart began with a phone call. It was Ben, his voice strained. Chloe's coming over. She needs to talk to us about something important. He sounded worried, which immediately put me on edge. An important talk, with Chloe usually meant she wanted something. When she arrived, she wasn't wearing her usual polished, professional armor. Her hair was messy, her eyes were red, rimmed, and she paced our living room like a caged animal. Ben hovered nervously, offering her tea, which she waved away. I stood by the doorway to my studio, my hands still damp from a piece I'd been working on. "I'm in trouble," she announced, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and fury. Serious trouble. She explained that she had invested the last of her severance pay into a high-risk startup, convinced it was her ticket back to the top. The startup had crashed spectacularly, and she was left with nothing but debt. Creditors were calling, and she was on the verge of losing her apartment. Ben's face was a mask of concern. He put his arm around her. "Chloe, we'll figure something out. We can help." That's when her eyes locked onto me. The desperation in them curdled into something ugly and demanding. "Yes, you can help," she said, her voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. "This house, it's the solution." I stiffened. "Chloe, what are you talking about? It's half mine by rights," she snapped, her voice rising. "Grandma always said she wanted to take care of both of us. You need to sell it. We sell it, split the money, and I can get back on my feet." Ben looked horrified. "Chloe, that's not what Grandma wanted. She gave you the trust fund. The house was for us, for Iris's studio." "The trust fund is gone," she shrieked. "It's gone, and this is what's left. Are you going to let your own sister become homeless while your wife plays with mud in the garage?" The insult, so casually cruel, stung me. "It's not playing," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "It's my business. It's how I contribute to this family." "Oh, please," she sneered. "Your little hobby. It probably doesn't even cover the electricity bill for that ridiculous kiln. I need a real solution, and I need it now." She turned to me, her face inches from mine. The smell of stale coffee was on her breath. "You've been living here for free, enjoying my family's legacy. It's time you paid up." My heart was pounding. I looked at Ben, pleading with my eyes for him to intervene to stop this. He looked paralyzed, torn between his sister and his wife. Seeing his hesitation, Chloe pushed harder. She stepped closer to me, her posture aggressive. "I need to move in, temporarily, until we get the house ready for sale. I'll need a set of keys." I found my voice, a tremor running through it. "No, this is my home, Chloe. I am not giving you my keys, and we are not selling this house." For a split second, her face was blank with shock. She wasn't used to being told no. Then her features twisted into an expression of pure rage. Her hand flew up, and before I could even process what was happening, the sharp, stinging impact exploded against my cheek. The force of it knocked me back a step. The room fell silent, the only sound the ringing in my own ears. Ben gasped, finally jolting into action. "Chloe, what did you do?" But I barely heard him. I touched my cheek, feeling the hot throb of her fingerprints on my skin. The slap wasn't just a physical assault, it was a declaration of war. It was the moment the facade of family civility was shattered into a million irreparable pieces. In that ringing silence, something inside me hardened. The soft, pliable clay I worked with every day was gone, replaced by something fired and unyielding. The fight was on, and I had no intention of losing. The days following the slap were a blur of strained silence and avoidance. Ben was consumed with guilt, apologizing endlessly while simultaneously trying to manage Chloe's frantic, accusatory text messages. She had left that day, screaming that we'd regret abandoning her. My cheek eventually stopped hurting, but the emotional wound remained raw and infected. I couldn't look at Ben without feeling a flicker of resentment for his passivity. I couldn't walk through my own home without feeling the phantom presence of Chloe's entitlement. My best friend, Megan, came over the next evening with a bottle of wine and a listening ear. She was a graphic designer, sharp and logical, and she listened to the whole story with a growing look of indignation. "She slapped you," Megan repeated, her voice dangerously calm. "In your own home, Iris, this isn't just a family squabble anymore. This is an attack. Ben is trying to handle it." I said weakly, more to convince myself than her. "Is he?" She countered, raising an eyebrow. "Or is he trying to smooth things over so he doesn't have to choose a side? You need to protect yourself and this house." Her words lit a fire under me. She was right. I couldn't rely on Ben to fight this battle for me. I had to do it myself. My first stop was the old wooden chest where I kept all of our important documents. I needed to see the will again, to read the exact wording of Ben and Chloe's grandmother's wishes. Ben had handled the legalities when we inherited, and I had trusted him completely. Now I needed to trust my own eyes. I found the thick envelope containing a copy of the will and the deed to the house. I sat at my kitchen table, the documents spread out before me like a puzzle. I read through the legalese, my finger tracing the lines. As expected, it stated clearly that the property was left to her grandson, Benjamin Carter. But then I saw the clause I had forgotten, the one Ben had summarized for me years ago. It read, "With the express condition that the adjoined garage studio be made available for the perpetual rent, free use of Iris Thorne for the duration of her natural life, or for as long as she wishes to practice her art therein. Perpetual use." For the duration of her natural life, it was ironclad. Even if Ben wanted to sell, he couldn't legally do so without my consent, as it would violate the terms of the inheritance. Selling the house would mean destroying my studio, thereby revoking my lifelong right to use it. A wave of relief washed over me. Chloe had no legal standing whatsoever, but as I kept reading, my relief turned to ice in my stomach. I was looking at the deed, the official document that proved ownership. I noticed a second page attached, a form I didn't recognize. It was a quitclaim deed, dated just 6 months ago. It was a legal instrument used to transfer interest in a property, and on the signature lines, clear as day, were the names of Benjamin Carter, transferring his interest too. Benjamin Carter and Chloe Carter as joint tenants. My breath caught in my throat. 6 months ago, Ben had, without telling me, legally made Chloe a co-owner of our home. I felt a dizzying sense of betrayal, far sharper than the sting of Chloe's slap. Why would he do this? I racked my brain, trying to remember what was happening 6 months ago. It was right after Chloe had announced her brilliant new investment. She had probably come to Ben, crying about needing collateral for a business loan. And my kind, conflict-averse husband, desperate to help his sister and avoid a fight, had signed a portion of our home over to her. He had handed her the weapon she was now using to try and destroy our life. He hadn't just allowed her to disrespect me, he had actively enabled her. He had given her the keys to the castle long before she had demanded them. My fight wasn't just with Chloe anymore. I was standing in a house that was no longer just my sanctuary. It was a crime scene, and my own husband was a suspect. The next morning, I felt like a stranger in my own home. I watched Ben get ready for work, his movements familiar but now shaded with deceit. Every smile, every I love you, felt hollow. He didn't know that I knew. I needed to keep it that way. If I confronted him now, he would shut down and Chloe would be alerted. I needed more information. I needed proof of not just what they did, but why. After he left, I called Megan. I explained what I'd found, my voice cracking with the effort of holding myself together. He put her on the deed. Megan breathed. "Oh, Iris, I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't going to fix it," I said, a new hard edge to my voice. "I need to know what they were planning. That quitclaim deed is a public record. What else is?" Megan, ever practical, gave me my first piece of homework. County records. You can look up property records online, including any liens or loans taken out against it. My hands trembled as I typed my address into the county assessor's website. The property details loaded, and there it was, Benjamin Carter and Chloe Carter, joint tenants, but there was something else, something new. A lien, a massive one, a home equity line of credit, or HELOC, had been taken out against the house 3 months ago. The amount was staggering, nearly 40% of the home's total value. The loan wasn't in Ben's name. It was solely in Chloe's. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. This wasn't just about Chloe needing collateral. This was a calculated plan. She had convinced Ben to add her to the deed, likely under the guise of securing a small business loan. Then, once her name was on the title, she had gone behind his back and, as a legal co-owner, taken out a massive line of credit against the house and spent it all. Her failed investment wasn't a sad story of a startup gone wrong. She had gambled away our home's equity. Now that the money was gone and the bank wanted its payments, her only way out was to force a sale to cover the debt she had secretly created. The betrayal was so much deeper than I had imagined. She hadn't just slapped me. She had shackled our home in debt, and Ben. Did he know? Did he know the extent? And Ben. Did he know? Did he know the extent of it? Or had he been a fool, a willing pawn in his sister's long game? The question echoed in the silent house. I needed a lawyer, not just for advice, but for a strategy. I found a highly recommended property lawyer, a woman named Ms. Albright, and booked a consultation for the next day. I spent the rest of the afternoon in my studio, but I couldn't work. I just sat at my wheel, the lump of clay sitting untouched. My hands, usually so steady and sure, were shaking with a rage so profound it felt like a physical illness. When Ben came home that evening, he tried to hug me. I let him, but my body was stiff, unresponsive. He pulled back, a flicker of hurt in his eyes. "Is everything okay, honey?" "Just tired." I lied, my voice flat. He had no idea. He was sleeping next to a woman who was methodically dismantling his deception, piece by piece. Chloe wanted to burn my world down for the insurance money. She thought I was just a quiet artist who played with mud. She had no idea that a potter knows exactly how much pressure to apply before something breaks. And she had no idea that I also know how to take broken pieces and fire them into something new, something hard and sharp and altogether unbreakable. The investigation was over. It was time to build the plan. My meeting with Ms. Albright was a revelation. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through my carefully constructed composure. I laid out everything on her desk, the will, the quitclaim deed, the printout of the HELOC. She examined each document, her expression growing more grim with every page. "Your husband made a monumental error," she said, her tone blunt. By adding her as a joint tenant, he gave her equal rights to the property, including the right to borrow against it. What she did was unethical, predatory, and despicable, but it may not have been strictly illegal. My heart sank. So she can force a sale. Not so fast, MS, Albright said, holding up a hand. She has overplayed her hand. We have two very powerful angles here. First, your husband was coerced. We can argue he signed the deed under fraudulent misrepresentation. She told him it was for one purpose, collateral for a small loan, but intended it for another, far larger one. That's fraud. She tapped the copy of the will. Second, and this is our ace, is your grandmother, in law's clause, your life estate to the studio. That clause is attached to the property itself, not the owner. It's an encumbrance. No sane buyer will purchase a house when they find out a third party has the legal right to use a portion of it. Rent-free for the next 50 years. It makes the property practically unsellable on the open market. A slow smile spread across my face, so her plan to sell is impossible. Without you signing away your rights, yes, and you will not be doing that, MS. Albright stated, our strategy is simple. We fight fire with fire. We are going to file a lawsuit against Chloe for fraudulent inducement and to partition the property, but we're not going to partition by sale. We're going to partition in kind. What does that mean? I asked. It means we ask the judge to physically divide the property. In this case, she said, a predatory glint in her eye, we argue that since she holds a debt against the house equivalent to 40% of its value, her legal share is that 40%. We will offer her the garage, your studio. I stared at her, confused, but that's my studio, exactly, MS Albright said. We offer her the one part of the house she can't touch, the part you have a legally protected, lifelong right to occupy. She will be awarded ownership of a structure that she cannot enter, cannot use, and cannot sell. She will be legally responsible for 40% of the property taxes and insurance, but will gain zero benefit from it. She will own a box she can never open. It's a beautiful, legal, perfect trap. The sheer, elegant brilliance of it left me breathless. It was a checkmate move, crafted from the very legal documents she had used to betray us. My role was simple. MS Albright would handle the legal filings. I had to handle my husband. That night I confronted Ben. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I calmly laid the documents on the kitchen table, just as I had for MS. Albright, I watched the color drain from his face as he realized what I knew. He stammered, he made excuses, he apologized. He said Chloe had sworn it was just a formality to help her secure a small investment. Did you read what you were signing, Ben? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. I trust my sister, he whispered, his eyes filled with shame, and you didn't trust your wife enough to tell her you were signing away part of her home. I countered. Your trust was misplaced. She took out a loan for over $200,000 against this house. That money is gone. She was never going to pay it back. Her plan, all along, was to force us to sell. The full weight of his sister's betrayal finally hit him. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. There was no fight left in him, only a deep hollow, doubt, regret. This was the moment he had to choose, and this time there was no fence to sit on. What do we do? He asked, his voice muffled. I have hired a lawyer. I said, emphasizing the I, and I have a plan. Your only job is to follow my lead, say what I tell you to say, and do what I tell you to do. Can you do that? He looked up, his face streaked with tears. He nodded, yes, anything. The final piece of the plan was mine to create. A confrontation was necessary, but it had to be on my terms, my turf. I started making calls. I invited my mother-in-law and father-in-law for a special family dinner. And then I called Chloe, I said, my voice sweet as honey, Ben and I have been talking. We think you're right. We need to discuss the future of the house. Please come for dinner on Saturday. Your parents will be here too. It's time we settled this as a family. She was suspicious, but the bait was too tempting to resist. Fine, she clipped, I'll be there. The stage was set. The kiln in my studio was used for firing pottery, for turning soft clay into hardened stone through immense heat and pressure. I was about to do the same thing to my sister-in-law. Saturday arrived with a heavy, expectant atmosphere. Ben was a nervous wreck, pacing the house and rehearsing the lines I had given him. I, on the other hand, felt a strange sense of calm. I spent the morning in my studio, not creating anything, but simply centering myself among the objects I had made. Each pot, each vase, was a testament to patience, pressure, and transformation. Tonight would be no different. Ben's parents arrived first, cheerful and oblivious, bearing a dessert. I greeted them warmly, steering them into the living room. Then Chloe arrived. She walked in like a conquering hero, a smug little smile playing on her lips. She believed she had won. She thought this dinner was her victory lap, where we would formally surrender and discuss the terms of the sale. We made it through the appetizers with excruciatingly polite small talk. Chloe dominated the conversation, talking about the booming real estate market and how it was a seller's dream right now. Finally, as I cleared the plates to serve the main course, she got impatient. "So," she said, placing her hands flat on the dining table, "let's get to it. Have you spoken to a realtor yet? I have a few recommendations." Ben's father looked confused. "Realtor? Why would you need a realtor?" I walked back in from the kitchen, holding a large manila envelope, and placed it on the table in front of Chloe. "Actually, Chloe," I said, my voice clear and steady, "we spoke to a lawyer." The smug look on her face vanished, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. "A lawyer? What for?" "For this," I said, sliding a document out of the envelope. "This is a copy of a lawsuit we filed against you this week for fraudulent inducement." A stunned silence fell over the table. Chloe's parents stared, mouths agape. Chloe snatched the paper, her eyes scanning it wildly. "What is this? This is insane." Ben, on cue, finally spoke up, his voice shaking but firm. "You lied to me, Chloe. You told me you needed my signature for a small business loan. You never told me you were going to take out a HELOC for $250,000 and gamble it all away. You gave her what?" his mother whispered, looking at Ben with disbelief. "She put our home at risk, Mom," I said, my gaze locked on Chloe. "She created a massive debt, and her plan was to force us to sell the house to pay for it, the house Grandma left for us." Chloe threw the papers on the table. "This is ridiculous. I am a co-owner. I have a right to my share." "You're right, you do," I said calmly, "and we are more than happy to give it to you. That's what the second document is for." I slid another paper from the envelope. "This is our proposal for the partition of the property. We are legally offering you your share." She picked it up, a triumphant sneer returning to her face. "See, you have to give me what I'm owed." Her eyes scanned the page, and then her face went completely pale. She read it again, her lips moving silently. "The garage," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're giving me the garage. Your debt amounts to roughly 40% of the house's value." I explained, my voice echoing the words a mess. Albright had used. "The garage is roughly 40% of the property's square footage. It's your share. Congratulations on your new acquisition, Chloe." Her father finally found his voice, "The studio, but Iris uses that. Grandma insisted on it." "Exactly," I said, delivering the final blow. "According to your mother's will, I have a life estate to that studio. That means I have the legal right to use it rent-free for the rest of my life. So Chloe will be the proud owner of a building she can never enter, use, rent out, or sell. But she will be responsible for her share of property taxes and insurance on it. Every single year." Chloe stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. The complex legal trap had finally snapped shut around her. She was cornered, outmaneuvered, and utterly defeated. The color, the confidence, the arrogance, it all drained away, leaving behind a hollow shell. You can't do this," she stammered. "I can," I replied, my voice as hard as fired ceramic. "You slapped me in my home. You lied to my husband. You tried to steal our future. This isn't what I wanted, but it's what you've earned." The family dinner was over. The ambush had been a success. The aftermath of that dinner was swift and brutal. Chloe, faced with a lawsuit she couldn't win and the prospect of owning a useless, expensive asset, crumbled. Her parents, horrified by the depth of her deception and greed, refused to bail her out. They saw her for what she was, not the ambitious daughter she pretended to be, but a desperate, selfish woman who was willing to ruin her own brother to save herself. Through her lawyer, she quickly agreed to our terms. She signed a new quitclaim deed, removing her name from the title of the house completely. In exchange, Ben and I, on the advice of MS. Albright, agreed to assume the HELOC debt she had created. It was a bitter pill to swallow, taking on a loan we hadn't asked for, but it was the price of getting her out of our lives and securing our home forever. It would mean years of tight budgeting and financial strain, but the freedom was worth every penny. The relationship between Ben and Chloe was shattered, likely beyond repair. He saw his sister with new eyes, and the blind spot he'd always had for her was gone. Our own marriage went through a period of intense healing. The betrayal of trust was a deep wound, and it took time for Ben to earn it back. He went to therapy, both with me and by himself, to understand why he was so pathologically conflict-averse and why he had prioritized his sister's manipulations over his wife's security. Slowly, painstakingly, we rebuilt our foundation, this time with more honest communication and stronger boundaries. He learned to say no, and I learned to trust him again. My studio, the very place Chloe had tried to use as a weapon against me, became my sanctuary more than ever. The ordeal had changed me. I poured all the anger, betrayal, and eventual triumph into my work. My pieces became bolder, stronger. I experimented with new glazes, new forms, creating art that was beautiful but also resilient, with subtle fractures and imperfections that told a story. My business, ironically, thrived. A local gallery owner saw my new collection and offered me a solo showcase. The show was called Kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold, celebrating the breaks as part of the object's history. It sold out on the opening night. We still live in the same house, but it feels different now. It's no longer just an inheritance. It's a fortress we defended and won. The air is lighter, cleared of the toxic presence that had lingered for so long. Sometimes, when I'm in my studio late at night, the kiln humming as it fires my latest creations, I think about Chloe. I don't feel anger anymore, just a distant pity. She saw the house as a pile of cash, a thing to be liquidated. She never understood that a home, like a piece of pottery, isn't just made of walls and a roof. It's shaped by loving hands, hardened by trials, and made infinitely more valuable by the life lived within it. She tried to shatter us, but she only managed to fire us stronger. And in the end, we became a work of art she could never hope to own.